Some say that switching careers isn't as easy as it looks. It's one hell of a roller coaster, from facing new challenges to creating new enemies. And that's precisely what happened to Jake Paul when he dived into the world of boxing. So let's see a few things Jake Paul has said to his opponents in today's video, which might leave you surprised. First up, Jake Paul and the press conference. Jake Paul went after UFC superstars Jorge Masvidal, Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor, and current welterweight champion Kamaru Usman, who were in the front row viewing the fight. In a message, Paul stated to UFC's president Dana White that he would embarrass them in the boxing ring and came at his critics to come back and suck his nuts. That's a bit too explicit, don't you think? Paul then delivered a direct message to White and his UFC superstars in the final question of his post-fight news conference. He pointed out to Dana White that he knocked out his 5-time UFC champion and apparently embarrassed his entire company. He sarcastically pleaded with White to let him fight Kamaru Usman, McGregor, and other fighters so he could further embarrass them and indirectly embarrass White. The 25-year-old's attack on White came after another venomous remark directed at people who have questioned his boxing career. Paul launched a targeted attack on Diaz and Masvidal in the ring following his victory, prompting Paul's news conference remarks. Paul declared it to be one of the greatest moments of his life after his arm was raised to victory. He has had the most remarkable year of his life as he won 4 fights in 4 major pay-per-view events in only 13 months. Paul also called out Tommy Fury, the undefeated boxer, Paul's scheduled opponent for his competition, until he pulled out due to injury a week ago. Paul used the opportunity to express homage and respect to Woodley for accepting the fight on short notice by calling him a real fighter, a real dog, a warrior, and a legend. What's the deal with Jake Paul and how did it all begin? It all began in a pair of amateur white-collar boxing contests on August 25, 2018, when the 25-year-old Jake Paul and his brother Logan Paul battled KSI and his younger brother, Deji Olatunji. KSI wanted to kickstart his career as a professional boxer, and after defeating a fellow YouTuber, he called out the Paul brothers. Before the main event, KSI versus Logan Paul, Jake Paul fought Deji in the major undercard match, and in the 5th round, Paul defeated Deji by technical knockout. Paul's victory led him to the world of boxing, where he was hungry for more. Since then, he has defeated fellow YouTuber Anderson Gibb, former NBA star Nate Robinson, and MMA fighters Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley. You'd be surprised to know that Paul has won a total of 5 matches with no losses and no draws on his professional record as of today. He states that no one has ever come close to this record at this age. His latest match was a rematch with the famous boxer Tyron Woodley. Here's a little background on Paul and Woodley's match. Next, Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. Paul and Woodley's first interaction was in a highly anticipated battle in August, in which the problem child, the term being referred to Jake Paul, was proclaimed the winner by split decision after 8 rounds. This is where judges scored the bout 77-75 and 78-74 in Paul's favor, while the third scored it 77-75 in Woodley's favor. Jake Paul's thunderous knockout of Tyron Woodley in their second rematch has left the boxing world in awe. On December 21, 2021, the former YouTube star put Woodley to sleep with a monster overhand blow in the 6th round of the rivals' pay-per-view fight on Sunday afternoon. It sent the former UFC champion crashing to the ground before lying motionless on the ground for seconds as medics attended to him. Woodley then took plenty of time to get back to his knees as he was temporarily unconscious. Next, Woodley delivered 39 power punches to Paul's 25 for a total of 43 punches landed by both competitors. It occurred after a relatively boring first few rounds, but it was all worth it for the tremendous last hit, which was felt by spectators in attendance and those watching television around the world. But the match wasn't what got the world's attention. Instead, it was the post-match press conference, where the winner, Jake Paul, called out some of the biggest names in the UFC and their boss in a rather bold statement. Jake Paul appeals to McGregor to figure out his life so the two can fight. Jake Paul says that Conor McGregor is still his ideal opponent, but the UFC star needs to figure out his life before they can actually fight. Paul is a professional boxer who has gone 5-0 and has long campaigned for a battle with McGregor, whether in McGregor's sport of mixed martial arts or in boxing, where Floyd Mayweather defeated him in 2018. To everyone's surprise, Paul has knocked out every guy he has faced in the ring. On the contrary, McGregor, 33, is an ex-dual-weight UFC champion with only one MMA victory in the last 5 years. McGregor announced last week that he would refrain from consuming alcohol throughout his training in preparation for a summer return, but some fans have raised alarm for the Notorious's health. When Paul was asked if he was concerned about McGregor, he clearly said that he doesn't give a S. Apparently, he just wants to fight him and hit him in the head, but he also wants McGregor to to win decently, for which Paul needs to save his life from falling apart so they can fight. Paul was referencing McGregor's most recent fight, in which the Irishman injured his leg against Dustin Poirier in July. Now, in other related news, Jake Paul's war on Dana White and UFC competitors has turned into a diss track. Jake Paul created a rap video called the Dana White Diss Track, which has an appearance from former UFC champion Chris Cyborg, who was forced by an actor imitating White into accepting an unjust deal that doesn't even provide healthcare insurance. Paul then goes into the track aiming at White and his business associates Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta, and fighters like Conor McGregor, Jorge Masvidal, Nate Diaz, and even retiring champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. Paul's attempt to demand more pay in the UFC while intensifying his personal spat with White via the track is not good for his career, but the diss track has over 2 million views on YouTube up to now. Paul's public row with White has indeed brought attention to the UFC's maltreatment towards athletes. Well, we still aren't sure of this track. Over the last few months, Paul and White have had numerous conflicts. It all started when Paul offered to retire from boxing and join the UFC roster, provided that White would agree to enhance fighter pay and provide long-term health insurance for his athletes. Instead, White retorted by implying that Paul was steroid addicted. This infuriated the boxer and led to a far from friendly rivalry with the UFC president. Next, Jake Paul is recommended to retire from boxing due to memory loss and slurred speech. We feel sorry to announce that Jake Paul, who has been fighting professionally for less than 2 years now, is claimed to be suffering from memory loss. The YouTuber turned boxer has only been a professional boxer for 23 months. According to The Sun, the younger boxer claimed that the hits he absorbed and his 4 fights had aggravated the brain trauma he got from playing American football. The problem child said that he had his brain scanned before he started boxing, and the doctors pointed out the lack of blood flow in his brain. This was primarily caused by the concussions that he received from playing football. One of the areas that he received concussions is the frontal lobe, which is important for memory. Paul's doctor has requested him not to continue his boxing career after seeing the damages to his brain. His doctor has said that if he continued boxing, his condition could worsen, which we hope it doesn't. Lastly, Jake Paul reveals a 5-fight bucket list. Jake Paul has named his 5-fight bucket list, while activities in the background continue to unfold. This includes the announcement of the YouTube star's prospective next opponent. Paul took to Twitter to say that pound for pound, superstar Canelo Alvarez was at the top of his wish list, with Floyd Mayweather, Mike Tyson, and Tyson Fury on his list. The internet sensation is clearly aiming high. The final name on the list is Dana White, who had only added fuel to the fire between the two when Paul pinpointed the UFC president for how he treats his athletes. Paul's popularity has allowed him to deprive boxing promoters of the ability to negotiate matches, which US media personality Stephen A. Smith considers a beautiful thing. Paul has been under heat for not fighting a legitimate boxer, considering the fact that he was supposed to do so in his most recent battle until Tommy Fury backed out. However, with talks beginning about the offer to see Paul fighting with the former middleweight world champion Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., things might take a positive turn for Paul. Well, we cannot wait to see Jake Paul hitting the sky. Well, that's a wrap for this video. What do you think about Jake Paul's statement? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.